Well, we're doing a good job of winning die rolls, that's for sure. This is a sketchy hand because we need to draw another land, but there's a lot of lands in the deck. I'm gonna make a pretty greedy keep, I think, and keep this. We can play the Ballista. One more land will allow us to deploy both Mana Reshapers. So I think it's worthy of a keep. And that was the perfect land, wow. Just exactly what we needed, so pretty lucky. Not gonna lie about that. We can now cast the Mana Reshaper. What was a very close hand just went to a very good hand with this Eldrazi Temple. Thoughtseize can strip away this Thought Knot, so that's pretty good. Probably against black-green midrange of some variety. But our opponent's missing land drops. So it's going to be Mana Reshapers. We kept the hand because of the Mana Reshapers. So hopefully we win the game because of these Mana Reshapers. Now if our opponent finds something like a Tarmogoyf, or a bigger creature, that would be unfortunate. But as of now, we definitely have the advantage. And if our opponent just misses their second land here, that could just be the game. As it is, this Inquisition can take away the Walking Ballista. Now if our opponent draws a Tarmogoyf, or draws a land for their Tarmogoyf that could be in their hand, that would be one way that we could lose, perhaps. Either way, not too much decision making here from either side, and that's gonna be game one. So we're up against black-green midrange as far as we know. We're gonna be boarding in the grindier cards, like the cards that are hard to deal with, like the Hangerback Walkers, like the Wormcoil Engine. These cards are just extremely difficult to get off the board. Cards that are not that good in this matchup, Chalice of the Void is actually not that good. Our opponent doesn't have that many 1-mana spells, and the ones that they do, they're likely to cast on turn 1, of course, like the discard spells, and then later in the game, discard spells aren't that good, so yeah, we're just going to board out all of the Chalice of the Voids, get those out of the deck. Relic is a decent way of making Tarmogoyf worse, so I'm going to board in an additional Relic, I believe. Ratchet Bomb is a fine removal spell in this matchup, but yeah, that would be the next card I would board in, would be the Ratchet Bomb, maybe the Basilisk Collar. Basilisk Collar is quite nice on Walking Ballista, but our opponent's likely to have a lot of removal. I like keeping in the Ballistas just in case our opponent has Dark Confidant. This is a great answer to that card, so yeah, I'm not going to sideboard too much. Been pretty fortunate that our opponent couldn't do anything in that game. Really hoping for a better game so that we can, so it takes us a few more turns to win. And this is pretty straightforward keep. Any hand with 2 lands in an expedition map, and a couple of spells that are significant, I think is a keep. So this fits that description. Although this Thoughtseize is going to take away that expedition map, and now we would really like to draw Eldrazi Temple once again. That is the spot we are in. But if we don't draw Eldrazi Temple, I would be fine with pretty much any land. Especially another Urza's piece. You could always run Urza's lands and be in a great spot. Although, we have to be worried about cards like Fulminator Mage that our opponent may have brought in. So we can just play out Walking Ballista. as a 1/1. It's not ideal by any means, but we also don't have any other play here. So, yeah, I'm going to go for it. I think it's slightly better than doing nothing. Not by much, though. We also, very unfortunately, drew our second waste. So now the Ghost Quarter of our opponents is that much better because we don't have a basic we can search out. So now our opponent can just simply strip mine us with that Ghost Quarter. So we can't attack into the Tireless Tracker. Just going to play this Matter Reshaper. Hopefully we can somehow trade the Matter Reshaper, get some land, maybe get a land off of it. Looks like our opponent has a wonky mana base. With Urborg not being a card you always see in these black-green decks, probably just straight black-green. I'd be pretty surprised if our opponent was playing, say, Abzan or Jund, considering what we've seen. The fetch land is going to allow our opponent to net 2 cards with the Tireless Tracker already in play, and kind of the opposite of last game. It seems like we're getting the short end of the stick so far, at least. Now, if our opponent does attack here, I really want to block with this Matter Reshaper pretty badly. So the question is, which creature do we want to block? If we block the Scavenging Ooze, trade Matter Reshaper for Ooze, we could also just block the Tracker and then ping the Tracker with the Ballista. And that's what I want to do, because the Tracker can just get out of hand. Don't see how we're winning if the Tracker stays in play. So we are just going to ping down the Tracker with our Ballista here. Now, unfortunately, it does mean that there's going to be creatures in the graveyard for the Scavenging Ooze, but that's something maybe we can deal with a little bit later down the line. And whoops, there it is. Another Matter Shaper. I should have said oops, there it is, but I believe that's the term. So now we can see what's going on with our opponent's hand with this Thought Knot. And lots of removal. We don't care about the Inquisition, so pretty easy decision. We're going to take a Fatal Push. And our opponent's hand actually isn't that great. So our opponent has one Fatal Push that we know about. So I'm going to attack with the Matter Reshaper. Our opponent also doesn't have double green, so I believe there was an Overgrown Tomb in our opponent's hand, but even then, the Scavenging Ooze only gets up to a 4/4. Let's see. Okay. So there's the Tech Edge. That's going to get rid of the Urza's Tower. And now the Fatal Push is turned on. So goodbye Thought Knot. Now our opponent gets to draw a card, can eat something with the Ooze. And the Inquisition can take away the Matter Shaper that we did draw. So kind of unfortunate sequence there. We could have played out the Matter Shaper, but we also didn't know what was in our opponent's hand. Urza's Bind, so we're still live to draw Urza's Tower here and be in a pretty decent spot. Although our opponent does have Ghost Quarter, they can Ghost Quarter away one of these Urza's lands, unfortunately. So we'll see. We did see Overgrown Tomb, Fatal Push, and Inquisition. So we know that our opponent, the only card we know about is that Overgrown Tomb in our opponent's hand. But that Tireless Tracker drawing our opponent 2 cards, even though we did eventually get it off the battlefield, those additional cards are adding up because we're kind of being overwhelmed by the ooze is slowly getting us, but it's just a combination of factors. The land destruction isn't helping us any. Now here's a Liliana of the Veil, and we're definitely going to be pitching Endbringer here to Lily, because Smasher is the card we can potentially cast next turn, and then maybe get an attack off with it. But now here's a Tarmogoyf. It's a 5/6. That's going to brick off our Reality Smasher. And I believe that's pretty much going to do it here. Yep. So I'm going to go to a final game here. So we're up against the deck we expected to be up against, considering what we saw. It is black-green mid-range. I don't think we want to do too much to the sideboard. I could see shaving on Ballista. We did not see Dark Confidant. That doesn't mean that our opponent doesn't have it, but I could see boarding in a Relic, say, for a Ballista. Another card we could go to is Pithing Needle for Liliana. So I'm going to do that as well. And yep, that's going to be the extent of the sideboarding process here. Okay, so this is a hand that's just a little bit too greedy. I kept game 1 on the back of having 3 mana cards we could cast. Now, sure, if we draw Eldrazi Temple, the hand all of a sudden becomes very good. I don't like mulliganing against black-green because of the discard spells, but we need multiple lands to get there. I think it's too greedy, so I'm going to mulligan it. This hand is... we have more to work with this hand, I think. Of course, not the same amount of power in terms of big mana cards, but we're at least able to cast our spells. So we can cast our spells pretty quickly. We'll get a scry off of it, so yep, this is a keep. And okay, Eldrazi Temple is on top. Yep, I think we do want that. That's going to allow us to cast the Matter Shaper next turn, assuming it doesn't get hit by a discard spell. And sometimes you'll have Eldrazi Temple sort of hands, and then other times you can try to cobble together Tron. It just depends on the draw. So here, our opponent's got a little bit of a decision with this Thoughtseize. They don't know that our top card is Eldrazi Temple, so that makes it a little bit less likely that they take the Matter Shaper, but still going to take the Matter Shaper, so we are sad about that, the results of that. So yeah, no reason not to just show the Eldrazi Temple, I don't think. And now we're at a stage where we just want to draw gas. We do have the Mind Stone, which we can sacrifice. We also have the Seagate Wreckage, which we can activate. So it's a pretty valuable land to have access to. Abrupt Decay on the Mind Stone. Okay. Interesting. So our opponent could have abrupt decayed any of our three artifacts, but opted to go for the Mind Stone there. We have a little bit of a choice in terms of if we want to use the relic, but I think we do. I think we want just that extra card immediately. Pithing Needle. We could simply name Liliana right now with the Pithing Needle. However, we could also just wait for our opponent to potentially cast Liliana and then Pithing Needle after. So Scavenging Ooze is the other card we could potentially name, or one of the man lands. It's a little bit dangerous to keep this in hand because of discard. So, alright, there's the Liliana. So we're just going to let our opponent activate Lily here. We're pretty happy for our opponent to be discarding a card because we don't really care about this Ghost Quarter very much, honestly. And, alright, so sure, our opponent just loses a land, but we can sacrifice this map. I think we want another Eldrazi Temple. So if we draw an answer to the Liliana, we can also play that. But otherwise, well, we already have an answer. Pithing Needle. But say we drew like a Reality Smasher, we could attack Liliana and just get it off the board, because the issue with the Needle play here is that our opponent may have something like another Abrupt Decay or a Maelstrom Pulse for this Pithing Needle, and then all of a sudden the Liliana gets unlocked again. So bear with me for a minute while I name Liliana of the Veil. And sometimes there's also multiple Lilianas in these decks. Maybe our opponent now jams Liliana the Last Hope into play. Who knows? But there's Maelstrom Pulse. Something I was worried about happening. And now the Liliana is pretty out of control. But there's Reality Smasher, just a perfect draw. Whew. This is back and forth right here. Wow. So our opponent surely is not happy to see this Reality Smasher entering the battlefield. And we're going to get this Liliana off the board, but who knows? Maybe our opponent has another Liliana. We don't know. Would be pretty happy. Okay, Eternal Witness. So that's going to mean that our opponent can get back Lily. We have one turn to draw pretty much any creature in our deck. It would be great here as a way to protect us against Liliana. Unfortunately, we did not find a creature. So our opponent's probably, if they play Liliana, is just going to play Lily and take it down. But I'm still just going to wait until our opponent's turn to activate the Seagate Wreckage. The reason being, in case our opponent has a discard spell, we don't want to get something stripped out of our hand unnecessarily. So, yep, there's the tick down of Lily. There goes Reality Smasher. So it's top deck mode. Now our opponent does have two cards in hand. But we have a Seagate Wreckage. And now we do have, we're part of the way towards Tron. What our opponent can do is plus Liliana, which they probably will, but then we can activate Seagate Wreckage, so that's perfectly fine. And our opponent's discarding Crucible of Worlds. That's weird. But that likely means that our opponent has two pretty good spells left in their hand if they're discarding one that's also pretty good in Crucible of Worlds. So there's the beatdown. The Goyf is a 5/6 right now, so we're going to get two cards here. There's a Karn and an All Is Dust. All Is Dust being the really important one there. We can go ahead and cast it because of the Eldrazi Temples being able to add 2 mana for Eldrazi spells, even non-creature spells. So we're going to get the Goyf, we're going to get the Lily, we're going to get the Eternal Witness. We're still going to have Karn in hand, so that was huge. And in fact, our opponent is playing Dark Confidant, despite not seeing one until this point. And we are 1 mana shy of Karn, so yeah, we don't want to let our opponent have more cards. So just going to use the Dismember here. And once this Karn enters the battlefield, we should be able to turn the corner. Scavenging Ooze can get really big though. So if we draw a land, I think we want to just exile the Ooze, but didn't find a land. Instead, it's a Hangerback Walker. We can just play that though. That should buy us a good amount of time, because this black-green deck doesn't have a great answer to Hangerback Walker. Unfortunately, we're pretty unlikely to just kill our opponent because of the life gain on the Ooze. At the same time, I think we're ahead in this game. But it's been very back and forth, which can certainly happen in these types of matchups that are pretty reliant on top decks. And there's one card at least that our opponent's been saving for most of the game, so pretty likely that that is something like a Maelstrom Pulse or a removal spell of some sort. Yeah, we're at 12. It's pretty close whether we want to block, but I think we want to block. This Ooze can become a 6/6. Now, sure, because the Hangerback Walker's in the graveyard, it can become a 7/7, but we're also going to get these Thopters as well. Looks like our opponent's eating Eternal Witness before damage. That's not really relevant, because the Ooze was already a 4/4. But there's the last card in our opponent's hand. It's actually a Kitchen Finks, which surprises me a little bit, but there it is. And Expedition Map, one of our many good top decks in the spot. We can use it now to get the Urza's Power Plant. And that's going to allow us to cast this Karn Liberated and just put us in an amazing spot. So I think we want to exile the Scavenging Ooze. We're going to keep around Thopters in case of opposing removal. So I'm just going to attack with 1 Thopter in the air. The plan being to just double block the Kitchen Finks when it inevitably gets in there. I'd be very surprised if our opponent did not attack with the Finks. Opponent is going to Ghost Quarter. Interesting choice. Our opponent went for the Tron rather than the Seagate Wreckage. The Seagate Wreckage is the land that gives us the ability to draw a lot of cards. So I think that was a pretty close decision for our opponent. But normally, I think a lot of players just go after the Tron on instinct. And that is what happened here. That being said, we can cast any spell in our deck. We have 7 mana already. So I'm not sure it was, in fact, the correct choice. So even though our opponent doesn't have any cards, still going to go ahead and go upstairs with Karn. And once again, yeah, thought not as good when our opponent doesn't have cards. And that was actually an error on my part. Pretty big error. So without thinking too much, I just tapped the wrong lands for Thought Knot. So what I should have done would have been to tap the 2 Eldrazi Temples, play Thought Knot, and that would have given us enough mana to activate the Seagate Wreckage. Instead, we're drawing one last card, so kind of one of those plays where our opponent has an Urborg and wasn't thinking as much, but hey, that's going to be the match.